prophets of Baal. They're a formidable bunch. They're dressed up in their best suits, in their best ties. They've got, they got the alligator skin shoes. They've got it all. They've got the hats. They've got the canes. And they've got the bling bling. Okay, they're decked. And there's 450 of them. And so what do? They go and they build their altar. Okay, this is right around sunrise. So you can see, okay, there's an altar set up right here, okay? So this is the altar of Baal, the altar of God is over there. The sun is rising over here in the east. 450 prophets of Baal surround this altar and try to make fire come down from heaven. Because the God who answers with fire has agreed he's the true God. So 450 men begin to march about this altar, around and around, praying, "Oh Baal, hear us! Hear us, oh Baal!" And several hours pass. At first everybody's sort of standing around to wait to see what happens. Okay, everybody's sitting down on the ground. Because they've been walking around this thing for hours, okay? So, it's noon, the heat of the day. They're getting hot in their suits. So they take off their jackets, they take off their hats. They're down to their t-shirts now, because it's just that hot up here on top of this mountain. The sun's burning down on them. So they continue marching around. They realize they're getting nowhere. So they figure, well, maybe Baal wants blood. So they begin to cut themselves and scream and shout and run circles around this altar until they're blue in the face. Elijah gets a real kick out of this. Did he get a kick out of it? He gets a kick out of it, right? Where does it say that? Let's see. Right around verse... Anybody find it? Verse 27? Yeah, there we go. All right. At noon, Elijah mocks them, saying, "Cry louder. He's a god. Either he's taking a journey, or he's pursuing some enemies, or maybe I don't know. Maybe he's on a journey, or maybe he's sleeping. We'll call a little louder and wake him up." See, it's fun to be a prophet of God, because you can make fun of the sinful people because they're sinful and they know it. He poked fun at them. And so they cried aloud and cut themselves, okay? And blood gushed out, and then midday has passed, okay? And it's going on. Evening now, okay? The sun started out over here, right? It was noon, right? Now the sun's setting. And they're still running around this altar. 450 prophets of Baal, bleeding, clothes tattered, sweating their lives away, calling to a false god. So what happens? Finally they give up. They admit defeat. And all 450 of them say, "We can't do it." So then Elijah comes over here and rebuilds the altar of God. And then he digs a trench around it, puts his sacrifice on there, and has guys bring buckets of water and douse this altar. Not once, not twice, 3 times, okay? 3 times they pour water on it until it soaks through the wood, okay? We're talking about waterlogged logs here on the altar. We're talking about wet stones. We're talking about the trench, okay? It's filled and overflowing. And one of those priests is like, "Man, I'm thirsty." So what happens? What happens? Elijah lifts his face towards heaven, falls down on his knees. Okay, I want you to see this scene, okay? He falls down on his knees in front of this altar and says, "God, let it be known this day that you are God. Send fire down from heaven and consume this sacrifice." Silence for a split second. And then what happens? As the sun's just dipping over the horizon, just as it's about to disappear right behind that altar, this fire comes down from heaven and burns up the sacrifice. Okay, this bull gets burnt up, burns up the wood, burns up the stones, licks up all the water. Okay, there's just a pile of ashes right here. And we're talking, the children of Israel, when they were marching through the wilderness and they had that pillar of fire, we're talking about a pillar of fire came down and just decimated this altar. And the prophets of Baal are like, ooh, salt. They're like, man, we can't do that. And everybody's like, ooh, the Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God. So what happened? Elijah was a man of God. This is the climax of his ministry. Matter of fact, if you look in Hebrews, and you don't have to turn there, but in Hebrews chapter 11, where it talks about men of faith, Hebrews chapter 11, verses 33, 35, we're going to read. We're talking about men who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of aliens. Women received their dead unto them again. Now stop. What do we know? What do we know about Elijah? Did he raise a boy from the dead?
Yes, he did.
So then does he qualify as a man of faith?
Yes.
Then is he in the hall of faith in Hebrews 11?
Yes.
So this is a man of God. This is a man of faith. This is a man who has a #1 connection with God. I mean, he's got the connection where you get down on your knees and pray. I mean, did you guys not see that bolt of fire just sort of come down and consume that? Okay, he's got it going. He knows the Lord. He's what we would call a role model for most of us. Most of us wish that on our best days, we could be what he was on his worst day. But what happens with this man of God? Okay, well, also, sad part of the story, he killed the 450 priests. Can you imagine having to kill 450 people? It's got to be terrible. But so then what happens? He sends off. He prays to God and says, "Lord, let it rain. Let it rain." And he sends his servants to go look 7 times. And on that 7th time, the servant says that he sees a cloud about the size of a man's hand rising up out of the Mediterranean Sea. Yeah, cool thing. Okay, just a little tangent here. Whenever you see a cloud about the size of a man's hand, you better know something good is going to happen, okay? You better know something good is going to happen. Because what's the cloud that Jesus comes back on? It starts out about the size of a man's hand.
Amen.
So if you see a cloud the size of a man's hand, you better be happy. So he sees this cloud the size of a man's hand rise up from the ocean. It sweeps over the land. But before that even happens, okay, before he even sees this sign, he tells Ahab, you better get ready to go, because it's going to rain. See, that was a man of faith. Before there was any reason to back up his belief that it was going to rain, he told the king, you better get ready to roll. And so then, finally, the cloud comes up, and he's like, it's time to roll now. You need to, get in your chariot, let's go. And then it was chaos, okay? It hadn't rained in 3.5 years. People forgot what rain looked like. And it's raining. And it is so, the dirt is turning into mud and just sliding all over the place. The king can't make it back. He's trying to ride his chariot down the mountain back to the White House, and he just can't make it. So what does Elijah do? Elijah runs out in front of the chariot and guides him back to... Have you ever run in front of a chariot? It's probably not the easiest thing to do, but this man's booking. This prophet is booking. Okay, so he's leading the motorcade back to the White House. He gets there, he says, yeah, go on inside. And then he heads off into the wilderness. Now here's the part of the story that not everybody talks about. 1 Kings chapter 19. This is where we get the title of our sermon. Thank God he does not listen to us. Let me start reading. 1 Kings chapter 19, starting with verse 1. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain the prophets with the sword. And Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, so let the gods do unto me, and more also, if I